Depths of over a kilometer could be reached, accessing the abundant coal veins of Western Germany. Generations of coal miners did this hard work, often risking their lives in the depths of the mine. Today, the over 120-year-old mine is abandoned, leaving all the above-ground buildings deserted, and the deep mines covered up forever. In this episode, we are taking a deep dive into the impressive history of the Heinrich-Robert mine in Hamm, to uncover the hidden past and the ruins of the disappearing mining industry. I have visited this mine on two occasions, the first being all the way back in 2019 and the second in 2023. We are starting in 2019. This period was 9 years after the last coal was extracted. The mine was fully abandoned and without much security, giving it the feeling of walking through a complete ghost town. After a while, we made it into our main objective at the time, the locker and office block. This was also part of the oldest remaining part of the original structure. We quickly found an open window accessing the headlamp recharging area, which seemed to range into the thousands. In general, a lot of it seemed to be already cleaned out completely, so we had to mostly focus on the architecture, which was plentiful. This grand hall is called the Loonhalle, in English the payment hall. Halls like these are typical in German mines. They were the grand entrance investors and clients first saw when they entered the mine. It was also the hall where the miners had special events and cashed in their wages. During our exploration, the entire structure was a true time capsule with no vandalism at all. The heating was also fully on, which made it quite hot compared to the outside. This was due to the building being heated by geothermal power from the mineshaft itself. After walking through a lot of already cleaned out offices and other rooms, we made it into an impressive section of the mine. The old locker and shower area of the mine workers. You might be wondering, it doesn't look like your typical locker room, which is true. The lockers were more like baskets, which could be raised up. In this way, personal belongings couldn't be stolen and could dry better compared to being stuffed inside an enclosed locker. This was necessary because much of the clothing could be wet from coming from the hot mines down below. They were quite typical in mines, being the standard all over the world. So this was in a way the start and the end of the day for the many mine workers. At the height of production, over 5,000 miners were active in the mine, each with their own basket. The operations of the mine were one of the largest employers in the surrounding area. In total, 3 separate locker halls were located here, all looking quite similar. But one locker room had something quite interesting. A lonely elephant was placed here in the corner. Letters such as DSK were written here, referring to Deutsche Steinkohle, meaning German coal. This was the company operating all the mines in Germany. So why the elephant? It can maybe be interpreted as the elephant in the room, with coal being something of the past. But in fact, it is the symbol of the town of Hamm. For history, we also have to start in Hamm, in the west of Germany. Hamm was always a collection of villages along the river Lippe, but rapid growth was awaiting with the discovery of coal at the end of the 1800s. The first mine that was constructed here was, in fact, this exact mine we are exploring today. At the time it was called the Wendel. The Wendel was an influential French industrialist family, one of the most powerful in Western Europe. They invested here because of the coal, which was the main ingredient for coke, a necessity for steel production in the many mills of northeast France. And so two shafts were constructed, one called Henry and the other Robert, named after the two brothers leading the Wendel family at the time. And so a small mine was opened, starting a new industry and kickstarting the vast development of the area. In 2023 we returned to the property. By that time the locker building we had looked at was already repurposed as cultural spaces. So we had to be careful, with people now residing on the terrain. It didn't take long before we found an access point to the old power station of the property.
Ja, hier is niks, dus pas op.
Balancing on the pipes inside, we were now on the ground floor of the old machine hall. This building was once a full-fledged power station, running on coal from the mines to generate electricity for the mine itself. But when power from the main grid became more profitable, it switched functions towards an ordinary machine house, managing things such as power distribution and ventilation. This was the main control room. A beautiful classic example of 1930s industrial design, all in a state of being fully intact. Behind the control boards, the in-house substation can be found, again in great condition. Here, the high voltage electricity was transformed into lower voltage, more usable electricity for the many machines on the terrain. The machine house was constructed all the way back in the 1910s, when the mine was starting up. The amount of natural light flooding the hall is typical for its time. Stuff unheard of in modern power plants. Why? Because at the time it was a symbol of status. Well-designed buildings were seen as a source of pride and as something to show off to customers visiting the site. All the old turbines were long gone, but not far away something impressive was located. In this more modern hall, a room filled with machines was still intact. The state of it was again amazing, with everything still looking great. Massive green-colored machines stood in the middle of it all. These AEG manufactured machines were compressors, used to pump fresh air into the deep mine shafts below. They were crucial, a literal lifeline for the workers. Again, it shows how large this operation was on the surface, with many aspects needing to be maintained and regulated. But these surface level operations were small, compared to what was happening over a kilometer deep. A massive network was dug out here, with hundreds of kilometers of rail, multiple stations and much more. The infrastructure is mind-boggling and hard to truly imagine. It's also a world lost to time, completely sealed off and flooded. And so these machines stand as the last true testament to the industrial past of the mine. In the interbellum period, the mine was continually expanding, establishing a coke plant on the terrain and a brand new shaft a bit further away to expand production. At the time it was still under French control, being the sole operator of the mine, but this changed after the Nazis came to power. They brought in a new industrial policy, giving more power to German companies. The mine had to be renamed to its current name. The original Heinrich-Robert de Wendel mine was now called the Heinrich-Robert mine, but it remained under the ownership of the French de Wendel family. In 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, France, being an ally of Poland, declared war on Germany. This caused a direct takeover of the mine by the German state. During the war, the mine was expanded, as it was crucial for the war effort. Although it was a strategic target for the Allies, the facility wasn't bombed heavily, which meant that after the war it could restart relatively easy. Business in the post-war period was truly booming, followed up by a continuous investment streak. The crown jewel of it all was a brand new hammer-shaped shaft, designed by world-famous industrial architect Fritz Schupp. The hammer is the symbol of coal mining, which was now towering over the coal mining town of Hamm. And so our last true objective awaited us, to climb the large shaft tower. But this was more difficult than initially seemed.
Het is even goed uitkijken, dat ene met die klok, dat is een kantoor, dus... Nou ja, kom.
It was straight across from the now active locker and admin building, which had people and security inside. And so we went to our point of access. Climbing on top of an old minecart access track, we had to slip between bars into the structure.
Ja, dit is echt kut, jongen. Ja, lukt het?
Being incredibly tight, we had to strap ourselves over jackets and empty our pockets, just to fit through. But we eventually made it inside. In a previous attempt, back in 2021, we made it this far when suddenly a security guard was on the way up.
Give me some of that.
The tower itself was made from thick steel beams, covered with brick. It was an example of industrial Bauhaus design, a movement with a philosophy of creating monumental and clean factories. Especially coal mining and power stations in the area were built in this style. One famous example is the Zegge Zollverein complex in Essen, one of Fritz Schupp's works, which is today a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We made it to the top. At a height of 50 meters was this machine room. With large panes of glass, diffused light flooded the hall and the hoisting machine. Although copper had been stolen from the massive machine, it was still an impressive sight to witness. The decay and bird droppings gave it a feeling of truly witnessing the end of an era. The final chapter coming to an end. This shaft was built in 1955 as part of a massive modernization effort. It increased the speed and the amount of coal that could be transported from the deep mine to the surface. This increased the output of coal by millions of tons, making it one of the most modern mines in the area from the late 50s onwards. But times were changing after the 1950s. Coal production was quickly becoming less profitable due to foreign competition and alternative sources such as oil. In 1969, the mine was sold by the Wendel Group to a new German state-owned company called Ruhr. The firm wanted to streamline the many different mines into separate blocks of combined mines. Bergwerk Oost, translated as Mine East, was a massive system of 6 separate mines combined into one. But although these efforts were impressive, they weren't enough and were too reliant on state subsidies. The coal phase-out began at the start of the 2000s, slowly shutting down the last couple of mines in Germany. In 2010, it was time for the Heinrich-Robert mine. The last ceremony was held and works were halted, ending the over 110-year-long period of coal extraction in Hamm. 2,500 workers were sent home, some of them being third-generation mine workers. The true end of a tradition and culture was finalized. Shortly after, the coal treatment plant was deconstructed by a Chinese firm, finding a new home in the Far East for the old equipment. After that, the partial demolition began. But not all will be lost. Right now, the large terrain is being repurposed into cultural event space. And so a new function is found, attracting many people to enjoy the legacy of the once mighty coal industry, built on the hard work of the thousands of courageous workers who put in the effort of working deep in the mines.